Hello, I'm Kay Ross and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do the Booksperience for Chapter 8 of Space, Time, and the Shopkeeper. Very exciting, I tell ya. In Chapter 7, Watson came by Arona's flat, and she was not ready for that. Nor was she ready to find out that her dreams are most likely real and that she probably did go to Taiwan. Ooh, overwhelming. Yeah, poor lady. All right, well, shall we see what happens next? Chapter 8, Alice. Arona blinked her eyes open. She was in her living room, lying on the sofa. That much she knew because she saw a familiar spot of peeling paint on the ceiling. She felt groggy, like she was trying to climb out of a deep hole of sleep. And there was some sort of pressure on the bottoms of her feet. She tried to sit up and see if Clive had knocked something over against them. "Are you okay?" Arona let out an involuntary yelp. It was Watson. Her feet were on his lap, and his thumbs were pressing into the balls of her feet. She yanked her feet out of his grasp and swung them to the floor. She started to feel dizzy. "You need to lie down still," Watson encouraged. "I was pressing on some pressure points to help with shock and fainting." Arona looked at him blankly. She did not want to lie down, but she was afraid she would faint again if she didn't. She lay back down but left her feet on the floor. "You need to keep your feet higher than the rest of your body." Watson leaned over to lift her feet back up onto his lap. She knew he was right, but angels in heaven, if Kunda saw them now! She stiffly allowed him to raise her feet. "Are you feeling better?" Watson asked. Arona didn't know what to say. She stared at the peeling paint on the ceiling. She didn't know whether she was asleep or dreaming. She didn't even know if there was a difference. Everything was all topsy-turvy. "What's your name?" Watson asked with gentle concern. "Alice," she responded, for that is exactly who she felt like. "Alice?" Watson sounded panicked. She would allay his fears. "That's who I feel like anyway. I've fallen down a hole and I don't know which way is up." Then after a sigh, she said, "I know. I'm Arona, or at least I think I am." She closed her eyes. Everything was too overwhelming. "Really? Does it have to do with your travels? How long have you been traveling?" Watson asked. Those seemed like odd questions to Arona. She hadn't traveled much at all since her big after-college European tour, except, of course, for the occasional vacation. And what did traveling have to do with her identity or how she was feeling? "I don't even remember the first time. My family has always traveled," she said absently. "Wow." He seemed genuinely surprised. "I've never heard of a family like that before." Arona lifted her head slightly to look Watson in the face. "Really?" This man was very odd. Handsome, but odd. He must have lived a very sheltered life behind all those books. Arona tried to block from her mind that the man she had been practically drooling over for the last 3 months had his thumbs once again pressed into the bottoms of her feet. It was a good thing she'd trimmed and painted her nails recently. They were a soft blue to match her eyes. "So you're an old pro." He looked at her in awe. "No wonder Santos recommended this town. And that explains why you were so calm the other night, too." She was missing something. An old pro? Santos? When did I see you the other night? And then she realized what kind of traveling Watson was referring to. "Traveling without mode," she muttered. And she let her head fall back on the padded sofa arm. That's what she had been doing at night, and he did it too. "Yes, traveling without mode. You do remember the other night at the Dairy Queen, don't you? Are you sure you're okay?" He stood up, rested her feet on top of a pillow, then leaned over her face. He reached out his hand and felt her forehead. She looked up into his still twinkling eyes that now also showed concern behind his glasses. "No, I'm not really okay at all. Where would I find a glass?" He headed off to the other end of the room toward her cupboards in the small adjoining kitchen area. Before she could answer coherently, he'd found what he was looking for. "Found one." He filled it with orange juice from the fridge and brought it back to her. He put a few pillows behind her so she could sit up slightly. "I'd make you a mixture of herbs and oils, albeit not as good as Miss Chang's, but they're all back in my flat. Orange juice will have to do for now." He sat down in the nearby blue and white floral print overstuffed chair. So what happened? Let's figure out why you're feeling so faint. Maybe I can help. Well, actually, Arona started. Don't forget to drink your orange juice. He motioned toward the glass in her hand. Sorry, I won't interrupt again. He pushed his glasses up his nose and looked at her earnestly. How could this kind, intelligent, well-groomed man be sitting in her living room? At least she'd gotten dressed for the day before he got here. She took a sip and looked away from him. She didn't want to talk to him. It was frightful to open up and trust a man she did know, let alone one she didn't. But he did seem to know what was going on with her at night. And he was so gorgeous and so fascinating. Whether she would ever admit it or not, she really did want to talk with him. She took another few gulps of juice to try to cover up the thought. Heaven help me, she said to herself. Kunda was right. She was hopeless. Then to her surprise, her spine suddenly felt a little stronger. Just a little. A resolve was forming to try and understand, and maybe accept, what was happening to her in this traveling without mode business. She let out an involuntary puff of air from between her lips, like the neck of a small balloon had just been let go. Her orange juice was about gone. She took a deep, slightly shaky breath and looked back at Watson. When I said I traveled all my life, I wasn't talking about without mode. She squinted her face apologetically. I misunderstood your question. Oh. He looked a bit disappointed. Sorry, but this whatever happened the other night at the DQ was one of my first times, and it's all been quite overwhelming. I'd never heard it was possible. It just started happening. Watson's crestfallen face gently turned into one of understanding with a smile. Did an older gentleman in a tan raincoat have a conversation with you right before it started happening? The irregular, Arona blurted out. The what? Watson asked. Never mind. She shook her head slightly. There was no reason to explain her unique vocabulary at present. Yes, a man like that did come in. He bought a book that wasn't even in our system. He got me talking, paid for it, and said, keep the change. Arona paused. It was with that phrase that everything had changed. Who is he? Santos, crazy old guy. Watson smiled, leaned back in the chair, and made himself comfortable. Well, he's not actually crazy, I don't think. He just happened to make my life a little crazy, and maybe yours. His smile widened. My life hasn't been the same since I met him either. She peered at him. So were you traveling that night as well? Yep. Went to sleep over on Market Street, woke up sitting in that car and knowing what to do. I woke up laying in the back of that car on the floor, she said wryly. You're kidding. Watson shook his head. Of all the... His voice trailed off. And you had information about the situation that just came to you, too? Yeah, I knew there was some sort of plan, and when we got to the DQ, I knew your plan. That's the way it comes to you, too? Watson nodded his head and looked off into the corner of the ceiling, deep in thought. What's going on? Who's controlling all this? And why did this start happening to us? Arona asked. Watson raised his eyebrows, about to say something, then lowered them and sighed. Those are some of the questions I've been trying to figure out and understand the last few months. He shifted in his seat. I'm part of a research group just north of Boston. I focus mostly on Asian American studies. I also give guest lectures and write articles and books, that kind of thing. About 5 months ago, I was taking the T home, the Newbury-Rockport line, from a conference in Boston where I spoke. This man in a trench coat, Santos, sat beside me. He started talking with me and said he admired my writings. He said I was obviously a thoughtful man. Watson's face colored slightly. He apparently didn't like drawing attention to himself. He had one of my books, Watson continued, and asked me to sign it. Then he stared at my signature for a while and proceeded to analyze it. Watson deepened his voice slightly to imitate Santos. Strength, determination, honesty, self-sacrificial, not afraid to be yourself. And finally, you'll do fine. Watson's cheeks were a deeper red now. Santos smiled at me, stood up, shook my hand, and walked off the train. That's the only thing I can trace to when my night travels started. I thought they were dreams at first, but then I started seeing things I'd done in newspapers. The night that tipped me over the edge, though, was one at a bar where I was able to prevent this young lady from getting drugged and probably raped or kidnapped. The next day, I was a guest lecturer at a nearby university, and that same young lady came up to me after the lecture and thanked me for rescuing her. I had no way to deny what was happening. He looked so at peace with the whole thing, not at all the way Arona felt inside. What did this mean to her life? Were her nights now controlled by someone or something else? How? Who? Since then, Watson pushed his glasses up his nose again, I've been trying to research all I can about traveling without mode or being transported or whatever you want to call it. I would try to find Santos, but I don't have much to go on. I had a sabbatical coming up and hadn't decided to go much of anywhere. I was just going to stay home, hang out at libraries and coffee shops, study, write a few papers, visit my parents in LA for a few weeks. But then, Santos left a map of your lovely Kingsburyport under my office door one day. On top of it was a sticky note that said, I know it's not very far away, but this is a great place to study. Good bookstore and library. Santos. So here I am. He spread out his arms and then let them flop onto the arms of the chair. That explained his book purchases and regular visits. I hadn't met anyone else who traveled, that I know of, until you showed up at the Dairy Queen. That's why I wanted to talk to you so much yesterday and today. Oh. It did make sense, as much as anything could make sense right now. Sugar's fine, by the way. Oh, and you know that thug you distracted for us? He got arrested, Watson said. Arona's eyes went big. Apparently, someone at the Dairy Queen called the police after they saw him punch someone. That must have been you, right? Arona nodded. Watson shook his head, grinning like he couldn't believe she'd survived. I'm glad it wasn't worse. When the police came, they found him looking for his keys in the nearby stream. They ran his plates. He was wanted for something or other. Then they found some guns and drugs in his car. Watson waved his hand. He's taken care of for a while. Watson chuckled. Wow. Maybe Arona wasn't ready for this all to be that real. Her dreams or travels affecting all kinds of people's lives. Watson pulled up his cell phone, tapped away on it for a couple of seconds, then held it up to Arona. Sure enough, a picture of the thug's mugshot stared back at her. Dangerous drug dealer arrested in quiet neighborhood, read the headline above the picture. Arona shuddered. His mom or someone really hadn't been nice to him. Watson put his phone back in his pocket. So, we got a bit distracted. Watson leaned forward. You were absolutely fearless that night. Arona shook her head and forced a laugh. She didn't laugh because it was funny, but because all this was so crazy that if she didn't laugh, she might just crack. I thought I was asleep, Arona said with irony dripping from her words. I'm not exactly known for being fearless otherwise. Interesting, was all Watson said as he leaned back again in the chair, eyes still sparkling. They both sat in silence for a few moments, lost in their own thoughts. And no word on the book, huh? Watson finally asked. Not yet, but I haven't checked this morning. Arona started to swing her legs around to get up. No, stay there. Watson stood up. I'll get it. What do you need? My laptop on the table. She put her feet back up. Watson got her laptop off the table. Is this a recording of you at night? He asked, looking at the screen. Did you set up a spy cam or something? That's brilliant. Yeah, that's what made me so late to the shop this morning. Arona took the laptop from him. She rewound the video and showed him her disappearing and reappearing act, not a little bit self-conscious he was seeing what she looked like asleep. Thank goodness it was pretty dark, and she was under the covers when she was there. That's amazing. I don't know why I didn't think of recording myself at night. You're brilliant. He sat down again, his face lit up. That confirms what I'd pretty much concluded, that we do actually go to these places. Thanks for showing me that. Arona switched screens and began scrolling through her email. Oh, here's one from Junia, an old friend of my dad's in Vermont. Let's see. She opened the email and started reading. She has it. Arona looked up at Watson and smiled. Shall I have her mail it directly to you or my shop? She asked. I'll drive up there and get it right now. I don't want to wait. His grin was huge and his eyes looked like they were reflecting the whole Milky Way, not just the North Star. That is, of course, if you'll be okay on your own. I don't want to leave you here feeling the way you are. She waved him off, though secretly she was thrilled at his concern. I'll be fine. Go get your book and let me know what you discover. I'll take a nap and then go over to the shop. She looked around for her phone. I should let Kunda know I'm okay. Your phone was on the table. I'll get it. He did, and also refilled her glass with juice and then brought over the rest of her cereal. Anything else you need before I go? I don't think so. Arona was overwhelmed by all his attention. And you have my number if you need to get a hold of me, right? Yes, you gave it to me at the store the other day. Great. So, he looked so agitatedly happy it was amusing. I'll see you in a bit. You need the address of the shop, Arona said, smiling. Oh, yes. I'll text it to you. Great. Wonderful. Thanks so much. He took his keys out and headed toward the door. I'll bring you some herbs and oils when I get back. He was gone before Arona could protest. She wasn't sure she'd be able to handle spending time with him twice in one day. Her blood pressure seemed to have multiplied by 3 with all this excitement. She texted Kunda to tell her she was fine and needed to rest a little more, but would try to come in after lunch. Then she texted Watson the address in Vermont. She took a sip of orange juice and lay back, looking up at the ceiling. Clive hopped up onto her belly and started kneading a nest. She absently ran her hand down his silky spine. Arona's mind and emotions felt stretched like a rubber band close to their breaking point. Who was she kidding? She couldn't nap now, even if she were offered a kingdom and a half. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 8. We'll be right back with the behind-the-scenes section, just after a very quick word from our sponsor. Hello, and I am back again to represent my company Widge, this time to tell you about my very first novel. No, not Space-Time and the Shopkeeper, but The Realm, The Awakening Begins. I wrote it way back. Well, I started in 2000 and I published it in 2008, and I'm hoping someday to do a Booksperience for that one. But let me tell you a little bit about it. I just re-released it with a new cover and my new author name and as an atlas edition. So it's got maps of, well, I'll tell you in a minute after I tell you what the story's about. So the story is about Gracia and Aiden, and they are on opposite sides of supernatural forces who are vying for control of their slum town. I say it's Harry Potter meets Narnia in Slumdog Millionaire. Yep. And years of research literally went into this book to make it very accurate about supernatural things and the issues of poverty. It is a very exciting book, and the sequel to it should be coming out very soon too. I need to do a little more editing on that one. But yes, and the Atlas edition, it has maps of the country, the town, and the dream world of Gracia. And these are all maps that I drew. Who knew how long it would take to draw all these little shacks in a slum? Anyway, took a long time, but it was fun. I enjoyed doing that, all the map stuff. Yeah, so this is a new special edition out, and the link will be below. And now on to Behind the Scenes. Welcome back to Behind the Scenes. All right, some interesting things going on in this story. Let's talk about traveling without mode. Yeah, so when I first started writing this book, I included this kind of thing in here, in this concept, because I have actually heard of this happening to people in present day, in history, and then biblical times. There's Enoch, and Ezekiel, and Philip, who are all transported by God, or translated, as sometimes people use that word, and without mode. Yep. So yeah, God is big. Why not think big? Just saying. And then Santos was looking at Watson's signature and was kind of discerning some things from it. It might be that he was being a bit prophetic, or maybe he was actually analyzing it. But anyway, I put that in there kind of as a nod to handwriting analysis, which I did a paper on in college, one little paper, college paper, but it was so fascinating. And I've always loved it since then. And it's like psychological backing. It's not some woo-woo thing. It's a real thing. They can scientifically back these things. And hold on a second. This is actually the book that I used for my paper. It is Handwriting Analysis, Putting It to Work for You by Andrea McNichol. And yeah, it's really cool. I think about it quite regularly when I see somebody else's handwriting or sometimes when I'm writing things, and it's fascinating. I'll put the link below for this book. And yeah, it may be old, but it's still very applicable and it's still available. So that's cool. And that is the end of the Booksperience for Chapter 8. I hope you enjoyed this one. Chapter 9 will be coming up very soon. All right, talk to you soon. Make sure to subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and share this video with all your friends so they can enjoy it too.